So who is the Zodiac Killer? However many years later, we still have really no idea, but there are a lot of suspects in the game, and I want to get into as many as we can, Brett, and then some that have now been excluded. I think the most notable one that we should talk about, just to kick this off, is Arthur Lee Allen.
Did it! Did it!
Okay,
Spoiler alert!
let
Arthur Lee Allen totally killed those people.
Okay, so
oh my God! And if not, take him out of circulation anyway. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the case against Arthur Lee Allen and how his name got thrown into the mix. So Robert Graysmith wrote a book called Zodiac in 1986, and it's really one of the most famous, popular true crime novels to this day. It's a really good read.
Then he also wrote like Zodiac Unmasked. And
That's
then
true.
I Solved Jack the Ripper in San Francisco.
Right, but the first Zodiac book, what I really like about it is that he sort of outlines the entire case. It's what David Fincher's movie was based off of, and then he comes to the conclusion of Arthur Lee Allen. But a lot of the Zodiac books that you'll read, they sort of come into it with a narrative that they want to explore, and it's pretty obvious from the beginning of who they think it did, who they think it was. You don't really see that in Zodiac, which is what I like, but he does come to the conclusion of Arthur Lee Allen. So what's the case against Arthur Lee Allen?
The first main part of the case is that he killed all those people.
And okay, I didn't know that you would go in on Arthur Lee Allen.
Did it.
Okay.
Murderer.
So, the reason why people believe that it was Arthur Lee Allen is because the letter that was sent to the Riverside Police Department after Sherry Jo Bates's murder, which we talked about was the first confirmed Zodiac murder, at least he claims, was typed with a royal typewriter with an elite type, and Allen owned one of these. I guess that's notable. And then he also wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch. So his watch that he would look at, assumed to tell the time multiple times a day, had the same Zodiac symbol right there on the face of it. And then Allen lived in Vallejo and worked minutes away where one of the first victims lived and where one of the killings took place. And also, he was just kind of a general creepy guy.
And when the police went to his house, it had little bits of like wild animals in his freezer, knives with blood on them, and strange dildos.
And almost
everywhere.
all of his friends turned against him.
And all his friends were like, this guy's a killer. And like, yeah, he totally did it is another reason I think he did it.
All right, Brett, but here is why I don't think he did it. Here's some DNA evidence that excludes him. Let's take a look.
In October of 2002, San Francisco's police lab provides the answer, a partial genetic profile pulled from one of the Zodiac letters. Similar in many ways to a partial fingerprint, the partial profile is not enough to conclusively identify a particular person as the donor. It is, however, enough to start eliminating people. Kelly Carroll begins with Arthur Lee Allen and his frozen brain tissue.
It did not match the partial profile that we developed. Arthur Lee Allen did not donate the biological material that was recovered from the stamp or the Zodiac correspondence that yielded this result.
So fucking what? Dude, you have little bits of animal. Maybe it's animal. Maybe you squeezed a squirrel out before you cut its brain out and put it in your fucking freezer, and maybe that's what you used to lick the stamp.
Also, Brett, he looks nothing like the sketch that went out there. The people that saw the Zodiac, the people that saw this man, they described distinctly a widow's peak. Arthur Lee Allen had male pattern baldness. They described a man that was sort of a stockier, barrel-chested build.
Yeah, but Majot said it was him, the guy who survived being shot.
But you even speculated about how much he could even identify, given that he only saw,
the
a silhouette
front of a silhouetted person. I think I'm gonna wait until the people who watched the first video tell us people who've been shot, what it's like, and how much your brain can really function after you've been shot. So we're looking forward to that. In addition, I feel like the guy did it. And all the timelines, line up. The fact that the letters stopped coming, so the ciphers stopped coming when Arthur Lee Allen went to jail for a number of years.
Yes, between 1971 to 1974, even though the Zodiac was claiming that he was still killing, there weren't any confirmed kills, but he was still sending letters to the police, except for a 3-year period where he sort of went radio silent.
Arthur Lee Allen killed for everyone in Vallejo. He at least killed the 2 couples who were on a date, including the person who identified him as the killer and wrote all the letters.
But then how do you explain the DNA?
The DNA, oh my God, could you lick the stamp for me? That's it. Oh, I hate the taste of stamps. Could you lick the stamp for me?
That's so weird.
Literally
Why
fucking
wouldn't
anyone.
Why wouldn't his friend? I mean, because his friends really did turn on him. There's an entire documentary that I would urge you guys to check out on YouTube of basically anyone that knew Arthur Lee Allen talking about how creepy of a guy he was, and how he was really inappropriate with young girls, and how people really didn't like him. Why didn't they say, oh, he had this weird thing with not wanting to lick stamps and getting other people to do it?
Listen, he's the person who went through a ton of steps to not get caught. He only needs like one person at the mall before he drops something in the frickin' post box, which they're not called, but whatever, to just, oh, I forgot to do the stamp and I hate the taste. Could you lick it? Got it, done, put it in. Who's gonna remember that?
The only way that I will go in on you with Arthur Lee Allen
one thing.
is if he had a partner. I think this is sort of a theory that we don't get to hear about a lot, but I've read about it a little bit on Zodiac chat rooms, which are amazing Zodiac websites, and I want to say fan sites, but not really fan sites. Check them out, they're really cool. There's this theory that Arthur Lee Allen may have known a guy named Fred Manali. And Fred Manali, they lived in the same sort of circles. In fact, Robert Graysmith touches on the fact that they probably knew each other in his book, Zodiac. And Fred also matches a little bit more of the description of the Zodiac. He has the face that suits it more, although he's still too tall. He has very similar handwriting. He was in the right places at the right time, and he also struggled with mental illness. He talked about suicide. He uses some of the same language that the Zodiac used in his letters. I think it's possible, especially with the disguises that we see, and just the way that the crimes were so different and varied. I think it is possible that Zodiac did have a partner, and following Fred Manali's death in the 70s, there was an ad that ran in the San Francisco Chronicle that said something about Zodiac real estate. There was some weird coincidence with Zodiac real estate being sold or being lost that people thought might have been an ad placed by the Zodiac's partner, if that was indeed what happened. I mean, there's so many theories that are worth exploring here.
That's it. You got me.
Okay,
there's other people that we'll probably list who I also thought did it.
Do you want to hear another one that I think?
Bring it.
All right.
It's
so
definitely not the guy's dad.
Oh, no, yeah, we'll talk about the fake ones too.
Okay.
So another one that I think we should talk about is Ross Sullivan. And I actually hadn't heard about Ross Sullivan until I started researching for this episode. And I think this guy looks really good for the case. Let's take a listen now to one of my favorite podcasts, Generation Y podcast, on why Ross Sullivan sort of slipped through the cracks until recently.
A possible suspect, one that's been gaining a lot of steam lately, especially on my site. There's a lot of people that really like this guy as a suspect, was a guy named Ross Sullivan. And Ross Sullivan worked in the RCC library. And it turns out that his brother was engaged to Sherry's, one of Sherry's best friends. So he also knew her. And this guy's name over the years, he's been investigated before by a guy named Dave Peterson, who was a big Vallejo Times Zodiac writer. He wrote a lot of articles about Zodiac for them. And he somehow got Ross Sullivan's name early on. And I don't know whatever happened with it, but he asked Dave Toschi, who was with San Francisco Police Department, who was the main guy hunting Zodiac, to look into Ross Sullivan. We don't know whatever happened with that, if he ever did, if he ever found anything. But Ross Sullivan sort of slipped through the cracks.
So this is why I like Ross Sullivan. This is what I would ask people to consider when they put a suspect forward. If you put a suspect forward to be Zodiac, you have to factor in that they were responsible for the Riverside killing of Sherry Jo Bates. And if they were not in Riverside, if they had no affiliation with Riverside, I don't think that you can put them forward as a credible suspect. I just don't. That's my opinion. That's what I've come to find.
Right, because you think that the Riverside killing was also the Zodiac.
I do believe that. And so that's why I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I think it's so interesting that Ross Sullivan worked at the Riverside Community College Library, so he also had this connection to Sherry Jo Bates, because what we see from serial killers is that the first kill is usually someone they know, someone close to them, before they branch out and they're just killing randos. So I think that Ross Sullivan looks good to be a suspect here. His handwriting matches up so much. Another thing that matches up with Ross Sullivan is that he matches the description of the killer so strongly. It almost looks like the killer was the drawing, the sketch that goes around was based off of him. I'm going to show you a photo right now, Brett. He has the distinctive widow's peak that goes down, because that was the one thing that I was always stuck on, because people they saw the Zodiac. They were able to describe this guy.
Fincher's theory is that this does look really similar.
It looks really similar. He also died in 1977.
Still looks kind of like you, though.
He also died in 1977. So I think, the Zodiac isn't the sort of killer that would just stop because he got bored with it. Look at what happened with BTK. I think that's a good example. You don't just, when you have this inside of you and you have this sort of, this gross urge, these desires inside of you, you don't just stop.
Here's what I'll say. The death thing lines up as well with the partner theory that you just gave. Mm-hmm. Also, Fincher had a theory that if you look at the photos of Stein, the cab driver who was murdered, mm-hmm. he was wearing glasses just like that. And the drawing that you're saying came as a result right after that same killing of Stein, the taxi driver. And so the theory is that the killer shot the taxi driver, wiped down everything to create a disguise, stole his glasses, put them on, and walked down the street.
Really?
Yeah, that's David Fincher's theory.
That's interesting.
He didn't put it in the movie, but that's his, that could have happened. So we might be looking for someone who wears glasses. And as you know, there's one of my close personal friends, Clark Kent, wears glasses to make a disguise, and when he takes them off, he looks like a completely different person.
Yeah. Such
no
a
one
good
would
disguise.
know.
So those are the suspects that I think hold a lot of water, that I think it's interesting to take a look into. Couple suspects I want to toss out because they've been getting some publicity, but there really isn't much there, at least in my opinion. George Hill Hodel Jr. We talked a little bit about him before on the Black Dahlia case. Now his the son. He just always thinks his dad is this crazy murderer.
Yeah, dude, everyone kind of hates their dad a little bit.
Well,
or a lot of people hate their dad. Stop saying that he's a fucking serial killer.
His dad was a shady guy. I think there's a case to be made for him with the Black Dahlia. I think that it's a stretch to say that he would also be the Zodiac. Another one was Earl Van Best. Earl Van Best's son wrote a book, and he said that his dad was the Zodiac Killer. But you have to look at how much of the evidence is circumstantial and how much really ties them to the locations, to the handwriting, because people are gonna stretch things. He says in the book that he found a handwriting sample. This is from Earl Van Best that.
Marriage certificate.
Yeah, it's a marriage certificate.
But it was written by the priest.
It's written by the priest.
So screw it. Listen. Let me diagnose you mentally, sir. Those are all metaphors you're writing. To you, your dad is like the Zodiac Killer. To the other guy, your dad is like the Black Dahlia Killer. It's okay. Mm-hmm. You just need to talk to a therapist rather than a book publisher about this theory.
Yeah, well, man, I don't...
What about Kane?
Oh, yeah, I don't...
He did it. He was the other one.
Why do you think Kane
He killed
did
the girl. He worked, I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
Because of the rearranged right. Well, that's another thing with this cipher that we can get into a little bit, too, is that because I believe only one of the ciphers has ever been conclusively solved, everyone sort of speculates on the other ciphers and what the letters are and how you can translate it. But you can translate it to mean anything that you want it to mean, and that's another thing that we see with a lot of these suspects. Is if you reverse them backwards and up to down, it says George Hill Hodel.
But didn't he work in the same place as one of the victims and all that stuff? Kane, and he looks like
I thought that Kane matched the description a little bit more as well.
And the girl who was driving next to him identified Kane as the closest thing to the killer.
Oh,
to the person she was sitting next to for hours and hours.
As the closest guy to the
As here's the list, the same lineup that everybody's shown. She was like, that guy is.
And where we're at right now with a lot of these investigations, because people have devoted so much time into doing sort of amateur, I don't want to say amateur, because they're really
but we have it, our amateurs are just probably as well equipped as the investigators
until
of the
the investigators, once the investigators close the case and make the files public record, I think it'll be really interesting to see what these people will dig up for sure. But what the struggle is that with Ross Sullivan Sullivan, I think he looks like a great suspect. We only have one writing sample from him. Then we also have, people thought it was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. We have so many samples of his handwriting. But short of DNA evidence and a thumbprint that would match the bloody thumbprint on the taxi cab, you know, we're never going to really know who did it, because you can sort of speculate with...
That's why I don't think that, because he said that the thumbprint was to throw you off, which is why I don't think that the actual killer did the thumbprint. I think the body descriptions are off on who we saw. That's why I don't think it was that dude who did it. He wrote, it was probably another killing, and he found out later that the thumbprint was there to throw you off. It was going to be someone else, so he's like, I did this to throw you guys off.
I don't know. It's a mystery that if you like true crime, you'll be investigating and struggling with for as long as you're doing it.
We're obsessed with the Zodiac, you and I,
Yeah.
and as well as the people listening and watching. So what do you think specifically our obsession with the Zodiac, as opposed to other murderers, reveals about us? And what's the significance? What is it that fascinates us the most?
I think it's because I would liken it to the same sort of fascination I feel with the JonBenet Ramsey case, where we were given clues, very clear, intentional clues, like the ransom note in the JonBenet Ramsey case, and then you have the ciphers and the letters here. And so it should be solvable. We want that gratification of solving a mystery, but it's unsolvable.
Wrong.
It will never be solved.
I'm just kidding. But the clue, I think the difference between the JonBenet one and this one is that the JonBenet one, I think, was to throw you off. And the clues in the Zodiac was to throw you on.
I think they were to throw us off. I think that when I look at the letters, I used to think that there were
Totally
hints in
different,
there,
though.
that there were clues in there. I think that he just did it to taunt us. And I think that I feel like the ciphers don't mean anything.
Totally different dynamics, though. Like, yeah, there's then you can
It's the same sort of sinking feeling where I feel like we're never gonna know the truth.
Right, yeah, you
and then
focus
it's the
on that.
desire to know what happened, what the fuck
Given
happened.
that there's the breadcomms are everywhere.
Right, why
Just
can't
eat
we
'em.
put this together?
Follow them. So I think for me, it's more what it says about like the communication and power dynamic of like a nefarious villain, media, and the police. And that's something that we have seen and get drawn into, but who we're vilifying, who we're kind of pulling for, because the killer's kind of an underdog, but so are the police. And the media is like the way we find out about it. But like we have tons of things where like those three like players, in addition to like the average Joe, are really what's dictating how we feel about it. And we can choose sides. Like, are we kind of pulling for the bad guy here? Or we're realizing how much power someone we've never met and has only killed 5 people has over us, how much power they have over us, given how well they're able to manipulate the media into making the police, who are supposed to protect and serve us, look like total juvenile idiots.
Because of all the difference in jurisdiction, the difference in
Jurisdictions.
That's a hard word,
Don't give me this my diction crap.
Yeah, jurisdictions, because of the difference in jurisdictions, and then it was hard for them to communicate with each other because you had the murder, there was taking place in Riverside, and Riverside wasn't communicating with Vallejo, because how are they supposed to know?
Turning the cops into the Keystone Cops. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what's really, it's all about that. And it's out there for us through the main way we gobble up media, the spectacle of it all. I think that's what's so fascinating. Yeah. And that's the same thing the terrorist networks do. They kill a relatively small amount of people and manipulate media outlets to make the threat seem enormous and mysterious, and make us feel vulnerable in our homes and the places we go where we take safety for granted. I think that's what the Zodiac does. And the fact that he's never caught and might be dead, and that's the other thing, is this person might have killed everyone and died peacefully and never suffer the consequences. That and Murder with Friends.
All right. Guys, let us know in the comment section below what fascinates you the most about the Zodiac Killer. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.